Actually, you have to go back to 1961 when I graduated from a small college in Michigan, and I had a marketing degree and wanted to go into the advertising business. So I knew that in a small town in Michigan, you're not really going to make it in the advertising business. So it was either Los Angeles or New York, and a college buddy and myself got in our little red Triumph and headed for Los Angeles. Now, of course, that was Route 66 all the way then. And it was just awesome to me as a young fellow who'd never been further west than Chicago, really. It just seemed as around every corner there was something exciting. It could have been huge neon signs. It could have been the wonderful aroma of barbecue pits. It could have been a freak show, of which there were more than enough of those on the road. Could have been Indian wares being sold by Indians, and it was just really something. Now, neither one of us had any money, so we couldn't buy any Indian wares or eat any nice barbecue or stay in any of those neat motels, but I always vowed that someday I'd come back on Route 66 and when I had a few cents and would be able to enjoy it and to do these wonderful things. Well, as time went by, and I did go to work in an advertising agency in LA, I just didn't have the time anymore to take the trip either way. So when we went back to my folks' home, which was in Detroit, and again, that's where I originally came from, we just jumped on a plane and took it both ways. So I never really had a chance to see Route 66 again. Then in 1994, I was owner of an advertising agency with two other gentlemen down on Wilshire here. My father passed away. And so Mary Lou and I flew back to clear up the estate, and he had just bought a brand new little Ford. So I knew, and I mean just bought it, like 2 days before he passed away, unexpectedly actually. And called the dealer, and sure enough, it was like worth half what he'd paid for it a couple days before. So we thought, well, let's go back on Route 66. Let's take the car back. We'll use it as a puddle jumper here in the LA area. And Mary Lou had many fond memories of Route 66 during the Second World War. I say fond, bittersweet's a better word. During the Second World War, where she and her dad and her mother and sisters traveled back and forth on Route 66. So we thought, what a great opportunity to kind of relive our memories of Route 66. So we drove from Detroit to Chicago and couldn't find the road. And finally, fumbling around where we thought it should be, and of course it's not, as many people know, it's not on the ordinary AAA maps or Rand McNally maps. We ended up in a truck stop in McLean, Illinois. And I walked up to the counter and I said, where in the world is Route 66? I can't find it. And the guy kind of chuckled. And he said, well, it's no longer a highway officially, so you're going to need this map set to find the old road. And of course, it was Jim Ross and Jerry McClanahan's map set. And we started down Route 66. And of course, with the help of their maps, we were able to follow it. But it quickly became evident that this road had been forgotten. And worse, it was deteriorating very rapidly as a result of poor maintenance. The roadbed itself in many areas was being closed down. And of course what had happened, Route 66 had become bypassed by a series of interstate highways, so that no longer did tourist or truck traffic, commercial traffic of any kind, travel on Route 66, or none to speak of. So it was, as I say, it was becoming forgotten, and it was being torn up, and or just so poorly maintained you couldn't travel it at all. The businesses, needless to say, were folding up. And so I started recording it with my camera. Now, just a still camera, all the various places that, some of which I could recall, neat old motels, the old Merrimack barns, cavern barns, many of the places along the way that were just disappearing. In the cities where Route 66 was really the original main street, that's one of the reasons it's called the Main Street of America. It was really the main street as far as traffic went for cities like St. Louis, even Chicago, and all the way out to Los Angeles. But in many of those towns, those areas were really starting to suffer. They were the poorer areas. So the neat old places that we remember in the cities, that we remembered, were being torn down and replaced with discount stores. And so it was just an epidemic of destruction that was happening along Route 66, and nobody seemed to care because they'd forgotten it. After all, you could jump on that interstate highway and you could get to from point A to point B in 3 times the speed as you could traveling Route 66. By the time we got home, we were so dismayed by this, and I had quite a collection of photographs, that I had decided to sell the shares in my business, in the advertising agency, and do what we could to save Route 66 before it became another Butterfield stage route or Overland stage route or Oregon Trail, which there's virtually nothing left of those. And a lot of people don't realize that that can happen today. You can literally lose a road. So that's how this all began. We formed a nonprofit organization. We went to the Department of the Interior, and lo and behold, there had been there had been actually a very extensive study done by the National Park Service, studying the viability of saving Route 66 and restoring some of the buildings. So with some checking around, we found a gentleman who had headed the study with quite a team of people, and met with him. He was out of Santa Fe, and asked him, what has become of this study that we keep hearing about? And he said, well, we're not going to print it, we're not going to publish it, because we can't, as a federal agency, seem to find anyone in the private sector who is objective about the road. They've met with all the state agencies, but their interests were within their various states. The Oklahoma group obviously is interested in Oklahoma. So they had no national organization or an individual devoted to Route 66 that they could work with, so they essentially scuttled the study. Well, right there while we were sitting with, the gentleman's name is David Gaines from the National Park Service, I blurted out that, well, now you've got somebody. So we came back, Mary Lou and I, formed the nonprofit, went to work to get a congressional bill passed for $10 million, which would go towards the preservation of Route 66 properties along Route 66, not the roadbed, but properties. And after 4 years, we were able to get that through Congress. And as a matter of fact, as recently as today, we're working with the National Park Service in allocating grants for restoration projects along the road, which is all well and good, except we weren't naive enough to think that simply restoring Route 66 properties was going to keep them alive. Because after all, it's nice to fix up an old motel, but if nobody comes and stays, you're not going to last very long. So we developed a publicity program, a worldwide publicity program to encourage tourism along Route 66. And all of this initial stages in the publicity and the working with the government to get the congressional bill passed happened rather quickly. Now the bill took forever, but we were right into publicizing Route 66 the moment we became a nonprofit. Those efforts are probably much more apparent to most people than our efforts to work with the actual restoration, because since we began that, the level of interest around the world in Route 66 has increased dramatically. It's become a major tourist destination. Our organization has grown to, we have members in 16 different countries. And the 75th anniversary, of which we were a major part last year in Albuquerque, drew an estimated 100,000 people to the city. And it just keeps growing and growing. And of course, we made as much hay as we could out of the 75th anniversary of Route 66 last year. And some folks said, well, okay, you've hit the pinnacle. You've got all the attention you're ever going to get on Route 66, and now the tourist traffic is going to start decreasing. Well, that hasn't happened. In fact, it's just getting more and more, and the interest is growing. And this year we'll be in Springfield, Illinois for an event that I am convinced will draw even more than 100,000 people this fall. So we can tell that the tourist traffic is growing from actually 3 different ways. One is the most obvious, the interest in Route 66, because we're the prime website when it comes to people interested in Route 66. They'll inevitably come to our site first or at the very least second. So we average about 2,100 hits a day on the site. And that becomes its meter in itself. What's the interest in Route 66 around the world? And you can see it'll drop to as low as 17 on occasion. It'll drop to 1,100 on occasion. Around 9/11, we were getting like 900 hits a day. The interest was really off in anything, let's face it, when that happened. But it's back up and at least as good as the 2,100 now again. Our orders for maps and guides is another determining factor. Those are people essentially interested in traveling the road. And then just talking to businesses along the road, the people that we know. The success of businesses now along Route 66 is based so much on those who realize what Route 66 tourism can do for them, what the increased tourism traffic can do, and they take advantage of it, much like when I drove down Route 66. Make the most of it. Don't hide in a corner, because there are those who hide in a corner that will say, oh golly, we've got a little more business, but not much. There are those that make the most of marketing to the highway traffic, and they're booming. So as you travel along the road, kind of keep your eye out for that. You'll see that the California Museum, Route 66 Museum, is doing very nicely. They do their best at marketing. You'll see the Clinton Museum is doing very well. They're doing the best at marketing. You'll see the Ariston Cafe in Litchfield, Illinois, where Rick Adams is a marketer, and boy, he's doing a great business. You'll see Fran Hauser at the Midpoint Cafe in Adrian, Texas, another real sharp marketer. Business is doing well. The Blue Swallow, where the Bakis are, although they put it up for sale, their business has nothing to do with the level of business they're doing. But their business is way up too. These are people who realize they are on a tourist attraction and they make the most of it. They don't just sit there and hope people will come in.